What is the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced while home alone? I woke up at 4 AM because of the screaming on TV. They were showing Twilight and Bella was giving birth. Truly terrifying experience. Sleep paralysis. Waking up from a nightmare soaked in sweat, with a weight on my chest and completely unable to move. Sometimes I see shadowy shapes or feel there's someone watching. You sort of get used to it. I had a choking scare when I was like 11 and I was home alone and watching TV while eating Skittles. I like to put a bunch in my mouth and make like a Skittle ball that I would chew on. Something on the show I was watching made me laugh and I swallowed the ball and it got lodged in my throat. I then experienced a few seconds of sheer terror because I realized that there was nobody here to help me at all and I was probably gonna die. Then I remembered some cartoon or something where someone jammed their stomach on a chair and got something unstuck from their throat. So, I lunged at the corner of the recliner as hard as I could with my stomach and it actually worked and popped the small ball out. It was super lucky because I really had no idea what I was doing, but one of the worst feelings I have ever experienced. Definitely never ate Skittles that way again after that. I did the exact same thing. I was 12 or 13, choked on a Jawbreaker, stuck in my throat and couldn't breathe at all. I was able to give myself the Heimlich, or something close to it, by throwing myself against a stairs railing. Took 4 or 5 hits before I was able to dislodge it and spit it out. Took me years before I tried to eat another one. I was chilling in my room and I suddenly heard this loud butt thump from the back door. It was seriously so loud that I fell off my bed. I didn't want to go investigate that crap because I like living. But if someone was breaking in I should probably go check it out. I message my friend the details and ask her to FaceTime me. We get on chat and she mutes herself so she doesn't make any noise. I turn the camera around so she sees what I do in case it does turn out to be a person and I die. I walk through my house and get to the back door. The door was locked, but the laundry room next to it was slightly ajar. I slowly creep to the door and take a quick glance in. Nobody was there, so I make my way to the back door and open it. Nothing. I go back to the laundry room and take a closer inspection in case something is hiding there. That's when I notice the broom that was supposed to be hanging from the wall was no splayed across the floor. Turns out the broom just fell. Still almost made me crap myself. One night I was watching The Conjuring at home with my little sister when we heard someone putting a key into our front door and opening it. We were sitting in the living room next to a sliding door that was very close to the front door so we both heard it very clearly. Now this didn't alarm us since we knew our dad had recently gone out to get some stuff, so we just assumed he had returned. "Dad, you're back already?" I casually asked. There was no response. "Dad," I asked again, thinking that he had not heard me the first time. Again, silence. At this point I get the feeling that something isn't quite right and I could tell by the look on my sister's face that she was quite nervous as well. I'll note that up to this point she had spent the evening rolling her eyes at horror movie cliches and she very rarely gets scared. We looked at each other for a moment wondering what we should do before we started hearing a few more scattering sounds from right outside the sliding door. I was frozen in fear by this stage. I tried one more time in a louder, bit shakier voice. "Dad, is that you? Please respond. Please respond," repeated in my head. But the silence continued. Now at this point I'm freaking out and I literally jumped off the couch. My sister also abruptly gets up and starts rapidly walking towards the other end of the room which leads to the kitchen area. She later revealed to me that she was planning on grabbing a knife. She had this horrified look on her face that I hadn't seen before. We looked at each other in nervous silence. I didn't really know what to do and I didn't want to make any further sounds. I finally decided to walk up to the sliding door and began opening it as slowly as possible, peering into the darkness. I know, I literally became the idiot who investigates the unknown. Creepy noise without anything to protect myself with. When the door was finally opened wide enough, I poked my head out and scanned the corridor, preparing for the worst. To my surprise, there was no one there. But what was more strange was that the front door was still completely shut. We never heard the door close. My sister and I were obviously both extremely relieved as we were almost certain that there was an intruder in the house. After this, I immediately went to go ask my mum, who was situated in her bedroom at the other end of our house, if it was her or whether she had noticed anything. She told me that she thought my dad had come home as well, as she also heard someone opening the front door around half an hour later, which felt like an eternity at the time as we still quite shaken from the incident. My dad finally arrived home and confirmed that he had not come home earlier. To this day my sister and I still have no idea what happened that night. Maybe someone did come in, but when they heard you call out they slowly and quietly left. Nothing quite that terrifying yet. PLS age well. But once I left all the bathroom windows open wide by mistake when it was very windy, and I woke up in the middle of the night to the bathroom door slamming open and shut and felt like I was gonna pee myself with fright. I stayed in bed like I was paralyzed, and I could feel this cool breeze coming into my room, all the cold air being let in, lol. I prayed to whoever above to remove who or whatever it was from my home and asked for my life to be spared. Yes, I am a frickin' P, y'all. I got under the covers and called my aunt and asked her to come over as she had a spare key, and she did. Her and her husband came with weapons and charged upstairs into the bathroom. No fear. They realized it was the wind pushing the door around. I still stayed with her that night, lol. I love that your aunt and uncle came with weapons to fight whomever or whatever was in your bathroom. You know they've got your back. Growing up, I lived out in the country with only a few houses near us, and both my parents worked full-time jobs in town. Because of this, I spent a lot of my summer days at home by myself. When I was 14 years old, I had just got out of the shower and was getting ready in the bathroom mirror when I heard someone in the living room. The majority of our house was hardwood, and there was a very distinct sound when someone walked through the living room. I didn't think much of it because even though I was home alone, my parents often drove home during lunch to eat. After the person walked around the living room for a couple minutes, I finally called out Mom, Dad, but no response. Instead, the walking just stopped. I had my cell phone in the bathroom, so I called my mom and asked if she was home. She told me no and that my dad was not either. I told her someone was in the house and she told me to get out. Luckily, the bathroom I was using was only a few feet away from the front door, so I opened the bathroom door and ran out the front door into the yard. Later, my mom came and picked me up and my dad walked through the house, but no one was there. This wouldn't have been too crazy if it wasn't for what happened in the following days. My neighbor's wife, who lived across the street, was taking a nap a couple days later. She woke up to a sound in her house. When she opened her eyes, there was a man in her hallway. She called out to him and he ran out the front door. When she went outside, her garage door was opened where he can manually forced it open to get inside. My neighbor's wife's underwear drawer was open and the man had taken all of her panties while she was sleeping. So naturally, I assume that the sound in my house the day before were this man as well. I was in high school at the time. 3 AM. I've just finished a term paper that's due the next day. I fall asleep on the couch for a few minutes but slowly claw my way back to consciousness as I trudge through the kitchen in complete darkness, half asleep and looking forward to passing out in my bed. BOOM. The loudest explosion I've ever heard. In retrospect, comparable to a 12-gauge shotgun. I hear stuff shooting in every direction, including small bits of something whizzing past my head. I dang near had a heart attack. Turns out my younger brother had made root beer as a class project. Elementary school. He left it on a windowsill and it fermented until it built up enough pressure to rupture the glass bottle. The stuff flying around was glass shards. They shattered a ceramic plant pot and embedded themselves in various surfaces. Fortunate I was unhurt, but for a moment I was completely confused and absolutely terrified. My dad dropped me off at home after bringing my sister to her party and I walked into a CD blaring super loud on our big old-fashioned speakers. The CD was super hot when I took it out, so it had to have been playing for a long time, but I hadn't heard it going when we left. Turns out my sister had left the CD in and then while we were gone there was a tiny power outage that made the music start again. Kinda silly, but all that was going through my head was, my favorite band is really gonna be the soundtrack to my death? Nice. The neighbor's dog being hit by a car because of the sudden sound of screeching tire, bang, loud yelp scream, then guy screaming "yoo" at the top of his lungs followed by a chorus of screaming and crying. By the time I got to the window they were carrying him away. It was really, really sad, and just hearing such a guttural scream of grief from someone in the middle of the night was terrifying in itself and still haunts me. Poor family and dog. When I was around 10 or 11 my dog got out, so I went to search for her. She was around a field and saw me, so she ran towards me and got hit by a truck. I had to use my adrenaline to carry this over 100-pound dog to the side of the road. Rest in peace, Alice. I took in a friend's cat that she did not want and I thought was being mistreated. My first cat. I was living alone for the first time in a very long time, so I was uneasy for about the first year. One night I heard a horrifying scream and went from sound asleep to standing next to the bed. I have no memory of moving. I jumped up so quickly. It was my cat hollering at another cat walking across the backyard. Scared me to death. I was home for the weekend from uni, but my parents and siblings were away, so was home alone. Our house is quite secluded, with a church and graveyard next door and closest neighbors up the street but quite a bit away. I had all the doors locked and was settling down to watch a movie when the doorbell starts to ring, so I go to answer it. No one there. Then the back doorbell rings. No one there again. This keeps happening over and over and it is pitch black outside. Then whoever it was began banging on windows and yelling. At this point I'm freaking out, so I begin to call the police and yell at the people outside that I've called them, when it turns out it was a couple of fellas from uni playing a prank on me. I was terrified and reduced to tears at this point, but they thought it was hilarious. They did a few more things like that to me over the 2-3 years I was at uni with them, and I always thought they were my friends. I'm older and wiser now to know that they were just C. Some people try to make sure people aren't home before breaking in when the intent is just to steal, and I'm rarer cases they will try to do this throughout many days in order to pinpoint the best window of opportunity for a burglary, but generally it's only the former. I was 13 and my dad was at work and my little sister, then 8, was at my gram's house. My dad and my older sister, then 16, had recently stolen back her dog, the sweetest Aussie Shepherd mix you ever met, from the guy my mom had given it to after she abandoned my older sister on the side of the road. This man did not treat the dog well and the dog still gets scared before eating to this day. So while I was home alone, the man comes up the driveway and knocks on the door. I gave the 1-minute gesture and then grabbed the dog. Literally had to carry her because she hates stairs. And my janky flip phone and locked myself in the upstairs bedroom to call my dad while freaking out and then calling the cops and getting mad at them because I was 13 and scared and alone. The situation can be described as janktacular. I woke up on the couch after a night of not good sleep. I looked onto our counter and thought I saw my brother's decapitated head on the counter. I was terrified, but turns out it was a watermelon. Turns out, he's actually Melon Lord. My mum once shouted my name when I was home alone. She was in another country. It was midnight, and I live in a 7-bedroomed house. Also, I once heard a scratching noise outside my house. Turned on the lights to see a rat had crawled up a window and was gnawing at the window frame. At 10 p.m. My ex-boyfriend showed up in front of my apartment and texted me he was there because he wanted to talk. I told him I wasn't home. Thankfully it was during the day so I had no lights on, and he called me a liar. He stayed outside for nearly an hour until he gave up and drove off. I stayed in my bathroom the entire time while on the phone with my best friend. Looking back, I should have called the cops, but I was a scared 17-year-old. My ex was similar. After 2 years I had to break up with him over text for fear of my own safety, and he waited outside my flat for 4 hours. I had to get one of my flatmates to tell me when he was gone. 1.5 years later he still keeps making new accounts to follow me on Instagram. One night I was home alone grilling and chillin', drinking beer and smoking dope, about half lit, wearing my hoe clothes. It was a great time. As soon as I sat down to eat I heard a woman yelling for help and pounding on doors. Once I realized she wasn't a threat to me, I sprinted up the road to find her. She was covered in blood and told me her husband was trapped in the truck he flipped. She kept trying to get me to help her pull him out of the truck and I said I know this is an emergency but I ain't no EMT. The worst part was I live in the woods with no cell service. But luckily I was able to get to my landlord's attention so he could call 911 from the landline. I was up until 3 a.m. that night because I could not wind down after the fact. Everyone survived and the guy got out on his own, but it was the scariest night of my life. Bro, at least you were able to help. 5 simultaneous creaks, floorboards, in the hallway. Sounded exactly like someone sneaking along in the hallway. There wasn't anyone there. I did run out of the house though. I woke up to someone pounding on my door at 3 AM. My boyfriend worked overnight at the time, so he was gone. I reached for my phone and it wasn't where I left it. So obviously my first thought was that someone was in my apartment and took my phone the stranger's style. I quickly snapped out of it as the person continued constantly pounding on the door and realized that my phone just fell off my bed. I grabbed it and called the police to let them know about the disturbance and that I was afraid to open the door and they sent someone out. I stupidly didn't even get out of bed to go look through the peephole because I was too freaked. I then called my boyfriend and was informed that he accidentally ordered food to our house instead of his work. I was watching a show where a mother literally became her home and the walls would move in order to protect her kids from the outside world. I felt my house shift, almost like in a slow motion. Kind of like on the show, and I thought, well, this is just a side effect of too much TV. But then I screamed when pictures started falling off the mantle. So I quickly changed the channel and it was actually an earthquake. I was alone 2 months ago and it was raining heavily. Was watching a movie with headphones on in the middle of the night with lights off. Suddenly I heard voice that didn't fit into the movie. I took off my headphones and I still could have hear it. It wasn't human but it wasn't natural either. It came from next room. There was also light coming from there. Turns out it was just my sister's Furby. One of those smaller, newer ones with glowing eyes. It was raining so heavily that vibrating window woke it up. Back in the 90s I had a Furby. I hated that thing. It was a terrible toy. So I chucked it in the back of my closet. A year or two go by, and I'm cleaning my room. My dad tells me to clean out my closet. I'm pulling an old baseball bat out and thud 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 out rolls the Furby. Hooah, it yelled. It made me jump and I smacked it with my bat. That was the most fun I ever had with my Furby. Hey, an opportunity to drop one of my weird stories. When I was in college at Georgia Tech I stayed at a building known as the GLC. It was on the far north side of campus away from most of the colleges, so not too many people stayed at it. I liked it because it was quiet and very easy to rebook my same room due to the lack of demand. When I say it was quiet, I mean we barely ever heard our neighbors, if we even had them. Really, only ever hearing other people when they slammed the heavy outer doors. This event happened during Thanksgiving break. I always stayed on campus during Thanksgiving to get work done and chill in peace. My 3 roommates were gone however, so the quiet GLC was even more silent. I was cleaning my room at the time and I had gotten out a bottle of Febreze. Now this is important because one of my roommates hated Febreze and would complain even if I sprayed it in my room because the AC would spread it around the apt. So I took the opportunity to spray some and get the college boy musk gone. As soon as I sprayed it I heard one of my roommate's doors fly open and slam closed and angry heavy footsteps stop into and around the living room. I thought I had fricked up and real pee off my roommate, but I did find it odd how quickly and aggressively he was reacting to it. I come into the living room to apologize. I even was saying something along the lines of, "Sorry man, I didn't know you were here." But as soon as I came into the room the sound stopped and no one was there. I was so convinced I had heard someone that I even knocked on my roommate's doors but they were gone. I texted them and confirmed that they were gone, and I was all alone. I never heard the footsteps again or honestly footsteps that loud, and still don't have an explanation. My parents own a business on the same property as their house, but separate from their house. Like, one building is obviously the shop, and the other is clearly a private residence with a fence, gate, etc. I was 13, home alone, and coming out of the basement with laundry. Walk into the dining room to start folding, and there's a man standing there looking around. I yell at him about what the heck he thinks he's doing. What the heck does he want? Get out of my goddamn house. What have you? Mind you, my parents' dining room is far back in the house. You have to walk through the whole rest of the lower level of the house to get there. And this sucker didn't once stop and be like, "Oh, I shouldn't be here." Nope. Walked right in like he owned the place. He says he's a customer here to pick up an order. I yell at him that the shop closed hours ago. Get the frick out of my house. Start screaming at him like a banshee on roids and basically shove him out by force of volume alone. He skedaddled to his car and left. and I told my parents what happened when they came home. Mother seriously called the next day and tried to be at my dad about my nasty attitude and my awful language. My dad cut him off and said he was lucky I didn't just stab him. He's now banned from the premises, and his order will be shipped to him after payment is received. For once, my dad took my side, and that cleared any doubt in my mind that I might have overreacted. LOL. I was paranoid for months after that. It was insane. I'm glad your dad took your side. I heard a loud crash and glass breaking in the basement. It ended up being a box of glass canning jars falling off of a rather precarious stack of other boxes. TLDR. Grandpa's alcoholic brother tries to break in and I cry like a little bee. I was about 14 at the time. Grandparents HSD left me home alone to go meet my great grandma at the hospital. I was chilling in the front room on my tablet. I had the TV on to a cowboy movie channel for background noise. I also had a big bowl of egg noodles. Life was good. Then the doorbell rang and someone knocked. At first, I thought that it was my grandparents and that they needed me to open the garage. But then I remembered that they would have called or texted me if they were on their way home. For the past 4 hours, my phone stayed silent and no messages had came. I went to the front door and looked through the peephole. It was my grandpa's brother. We'll call him Marvin. Marvin had gotten divorced 2 years prior to this. He was an alcoholic and he had been drifting from house to house of family and friends. He had stayed with us a few months ago, but my grandpa kicked him out after discovering that Marvin was crapping on the floor even though the toilet was right next to his room. After Marvin left, he had tried to break in, but Grandpa had stuck wood in the window so it couldn't open. Grandpa also knew that his brother was too scared to break a window, even if he was drunk. Marvin started calling for someone to answer the door. Me, being scared that he would somehow get in and potentially kill me, started crying and turned the TV off. I grabbed my phone and dragged my crying butt to the back door where I softly called for my dogs, who were in the backyard. The dogs followed me and I went into the bathroom and shut and locked the door with my dogs. Marvin kept banging on the front door and I called my grandma in tears. Grandma told me that she would call our neighbor, Paul, and that her and grandpa would be home in a half hour. I stayed in the bathroom and kept crying as Marvin banged on the door. My dogs licked me to try and calm me down. Eventually, the banging stopped and grandma called me and said that Paul had chased Marvin away. Grandma and grandpa came home 10 minutes later and I felt better. I'm 18 now and I haven't heard one word about Marvin. I'm not sure if he's dead or alive. Some say he is still crapping on floors to this day. Not supernatural or anything, just a timely coincidence. Last October I found a Ouija board in Goodwill. Brought it home. A few days later I was home by myself and threw what the heck I mess around with it. So I sat down on the floor and I'm not even joking when I say this. As soon as I said, "Is there someone here?" the power went out. Like a week later found out wind had knocked down a power line. Not gonna lie, I pee my pants from fear. Me and my dog were chilling in the basement when all of a sudden I see what is very clearly a flashlight beam in the yard near the tiny basement window. I was especially spooked because only a few weeks before my sister and I had been up very late and, after turning on the kitchen light, had seen a person sprinting across the yard to get away after realizing someone was awake. I thought I was gonna pee myself with fear, went upstairs, turned on a light so they knew someone was awake, and let the dog out. She went crazy, barking and whining, and I slowly stuck my head out the door. It was the neighbor kids who had just moved in, looking for their cat that had gotten out. I was but mostly just relieved, and let them know that out here in rural areas standing in someone's yard at night could get you shot. Was playing Xbox on my home theater setup. 100-inch projector screen, surround sound, the whole shabam. Mind you, I had the headset on with the game audio, so I turned the volume of the surround sound receiver completely off. Just me, big screen in the dark room, was thunderstorming outside, me playing some COD. Next thing you know, everything goes black, power goes out. That's when I went pale. Well, when the power went out and reset, so did the surround sound receiver. Who would have known at reset it would turn it back on full blast white noise. Pitch black room, surround sound white noise on full blast. Full blast, crazy loud. I couldn't process what was happening. I thought I just got struck by lightning. Once I microwaved a hard-boiled egg for 10 seconds. Took it out and while it was holding it in my hand looking at it, it exploded. Except I don't remember it exploding. I just remember sudden pain. My face was warm, my hand hurt and the egg was gone. I thought I had been shot. Took me a good 30 seconds to process what had happened. 2 Jehovah's Witnesses just walked into my bungalow and started being aggressive and pushy about their beliefs. I think they thought that because I was young and used a wheelchair I would be an easy target. They only left when I threatened to call the police. This happened just a few hours ago and then I was laughing about it just from the absurdity of the situation, but now I'm a bit creeped out. I live in the outskirts of a small rural town with low crime. My neighbors are hoarders and their junk clutters their yard. It's storming pretty severely with rain, wind, crazy lightning act. Enter morbidly obese naked man. Just walking in the street, peering at the junk hoard, looks in the neighbor's window, starts going through their wet soggy junk, notices my house and goes behind our tree trying to peek in the window of my room. Must have seen my light on because off he goes to the tune of thunder down the road peeping in other windows. What the actual frick? Call the cops. I was doing home renovations and was painting a sunroom with oil-based paint. It was stinky, so my brilliant butt closed off the door to the rest of the house so the smell wouldn't spread. And I didn't want to open the front door and invite a bunch of bugs in the house. So I was spraying very fumey paint in an enclosed space when I was home alone and my wife wouldn't be home for another 10 hours. Fortunately, I had the presence of mind to eventually notice that my tongue had gone numb and got myself out of there before I had the chance to pass out and die, only to be discovered many hours later. Not the typical Home Alone story, but it was terrifying when I realized what I had almost done. This kinda stuff really scares me. There being dangerous gases that I don't notice are killing me. A dentist in my town died because a laughing gas container was leaking without notice and he suffocated in the building while alone. One of those freaky shelf cloud thunderstorms hit while I was alone, and I was huddled in front of the news seeing pictures of it and hearing about how tornadoes were forming all over. And no, we didn't have a basement. That's when you go into the bathroom, or the interior-most room without windows. I was reading a book in my bedroom when I heard someone fart in the kitchen. I thought it was funny at first, but then I remembered I was home alone. I got a bit scared, but I checked the kitchen anyway. No one there. Searched the house. Nothing. I tell myself I just imagined it. Left my house to get the mail and came back to find the front door wide open. Right as I walk in, the phone starts ringing and caller ID says it's my own phone calling from inside the house. I freak out, go back outside with my dog, and call my best friend thinking it's some sort of serial killer. Turns out it was a total coincidence of me not closing my door properly and a phone glitch. I'll always thank the universe for that dope when a stranger calls reference though. I've put this story on here before, but it fits this thread. On my last night in my university house I was woken by something pulling on my foot in the middle of the night. I panicked and thought someone or something was in the house. I laid in bed paralyzed with fear trying to listen for any footsteps or noise and nothing. Eventually I put my phone torch on and saw neighbor's cat playing outside my bedroom door. He'd always out the garden and never came in. He was also a super mean cat that you couldn't stroke. I'd left the kitchen window open and that was how he came in. It was honestly one of the scariest moments of my life and it was a freaking cat. TLDR. My neighbor's demon cat snuck into my old house on my last night there and woke me in the middle of the night. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.